Is Dabo Swinney leading too hard on culture? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Clemson.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Tiger fans? Morgan Thomas here, Clemson fan, Clemson grad, host and producer of Locked On Clemson, part-time host and producer over on 105.5 FM The Roar. Thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you so much for making us that. All those everydayers out there, you know who you are. You know how you do it here, tuning in Monday through Friday every single week. And if you're not an everydayer, well, what are you waiting for? Hit that follow, hit that subscribe so you can stick with us and never miss another episode. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. When you look at today's show, we're going to finish up with segment 3 and the rivalry game and how they can build momentum and what reality is we're facing in this game this weekend. Then segment 2, before that, we'll talk about Chris Denson, a lot of hype around him, why it's warranted and why maybe it's not. And then we'll start off first, though, right now, talking about that culture. And it's a lot about culture at Clemson, and rightfully so. Dabo has spent a long time building this program exactly the way he wants it, and he talks about it in his press conferences, talking about player character, praising what they've been able to do through some of the struggles, specifically one of the few teams in Clemson history that have been able to rebound from such a horrible start and then become bowl eligible. And that, to me and to him, reflects on the character, reflects on the leadership, and just the perseverance that this team has been able to display, and strength as well. Clemson has been founded on building character of players. Dabo focuses on character, focuses on leadership ability, developing that, life skills, long-term personal growth. Those are all things that are extremely important when you're developing young men, which I do believe that Dabo is responsible for doing in some part, and that it is important for the world of college football and the level of play, being it is still developmental, to have that. Unfortunately, the world is telling us that that is no longer an important factor, and there is a crossroads of how much you can really spend time doing those things. As Dabo mentioned, talking about the seniors, mentioning developing them into great husbands, great fathers, and great men for the community, and being a case study for other teams to reflect on it and kind of evaluate themselves against Clemson. It was definitely heartfelt where Dabo is trying to go. And it makes a lot of sense based on the type of culture that he's wanting. And for the most part, you're getting a large amount of guys who are talented and who want to be good people for the communities and want to be leaders, want to be good husbands, good fathers, all those things. The problem that you have is that, again, the world is not really interested in that anymore. College football has done everything they can to separate themselves, just like our government has done everything they can to separate themselves. And our marketplace has done everything it can to separate itself from those, what you may say, are old school values that Dabo Swinney holds. A lot of it is about, what have you done for me lately? And how much money can you make for me? And if you can make me more money, then I'll pay you more money. The culture around college football and outside of college football is not that of development of men, development of husbands, development of fathers, and development of leaders for their community. Clemson's culture, though, is built on that. And I think it's important to not sway from that. especially under Dabo Swinney. If there's another coach that wants to come in and change that, then I can understand that too. But under Dabo Swinney, I think he needs to stick to what his values are, and he is doing that. The problem, though, is that it is also hard to do that when your main job is to produce a team that is executing and winning at a high level. Right now, under Dabo Swinney and this team, it's not executing well. It's not very coordinated. It's not very together, although they've been getting a little bit better as the end of the season goes on. Fans want to hear real changes for this team and the issues that are happening on the football field, and not so much wanting to hear about what's going on behind the closed doors with the culture. But I do believe that the culture is extremely important for Clemson to dig themselves out of this hole and to just get to 6-6. But the problem still is the problem. Why is the offense not successful? Why is it stalling? Why is it like spaghetti on the wall when it comes to play calling? Why did this team have such a struggle to start off the season? Why have the past couple of teams struggled to start the season off? What is happening with positional development in those position groups and those players in those groups? Why does it feel like that the players are the same players every single year and they're not getting better? What is the problem with the gap on the offensive line compared to other teams? What's the problem with the gap on the defensive line compared to other teams? And are the plays and the schemes that Dabo's team is running keeping up with the level of competition that he is having to deal with? Those are real challenges that Dabo has to figure out while not swaying from his core values. I don't think anybody as a Clemson fan wants Dabo to sway from his core values, but he's got to admit that it's beyond a culture thing here. Culture, yes, got them to win games this season that maybe they wouldn't have, or got them to not give up this season. So that message still matters for sure. But the football results also matter. This team, again, even though it's great that they came back from 1-3 overall to be 6-6, that is not the standard that Clemson fans want to hear about. The culture is great, but the standard is being relevant in football on a national level. And Dabo also was a big reason why Clemson is even there. But even before Dabo Swinney, 8 wins, 9-win seasons over and over and over were not acceptable. Clemson fans wanted to see ACC championships. Clemson fans wanted to see wins against South Carolina regularly. They wanted to see wins against Florida State regularly, and they wanted to see wins against Alabama, Georgia, and the other powerhouses regularly. And so they're still wanting that even before Dabo Swinney, and they're wanting it now after Dabo Swinney, or while they have Dabo Swinney, if you will. Dabo has had many years here with Clemson, so he understands what the desire is of the fan base and what the goals are for the community. You don't, and I have said this many times, you don't have an 80,000+ fan stadium to go 6-6 or 6-7 or 7-6 or 6-7, whatever it may be. So there has to be some real reflection, and I can understand where the fan base is kind of tired of the culture talk, because it feels great when you're like winning double-digit games and you're going to the playoff and you can brag that you have a better culture than everybody else and you care about the young men more than everybody else. But when you're 6-6 or you're struggling to become bowl eligible at all, the culture there starts to get questioned. Yes, they fought through, they didn't give up, and I can tell that for sure from the play on the field. But the execution and the expectations on the football field still matter very much. This offseason is going to be huge for what Dabo Swinney will do to fix the problems that really he caused himself, with the roster that he has built, with the staff that he has built, everything that is going on in that football program was signed off on by Dabo over multiple years, even a decade. So where Clemson is right now is fully on Dabo Swinney's plate and his responsibility to own up to, which he has, but also to fix in the future. And we know how college football is going. Again, you can brag about culture all you want, but the big deal is, what have you done for me lately? And how are you improving this program? And so he's going to have a big challenge this offseason. I believe he can do it. It's going to be difficult. There's not many head coaches that have been able to do it, but he has earned the right to get a shot at it. But it's still going to be kind of a wait and see expectation now on what Dabo is going to do in January, starting in the offseason immediately to fix this team for 2026. And there is a lot probably to fix for this team. All right, hey, we're going to get into segment 2 talking about Chris Denson, one of the stars from the Furman game, right here on Locked On Clemson. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team's making that late game push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. You know, Chris Denson had that kind of stat line that sends a message into the message boards. Over 100 yards rushing, a touchdown, and really kind of shook up the fan base in a scenario where against Furman was kind of getting a little bit frustrating because the offense was struggling. They were having to get, fourth down conversions when they got in the backups after getting a lead. Christopher Vizina and those backups didn't do very well. And then they finally get Chris Denson in, and you hear a lot of people on social media begging for him, and he goes out and he just tears it up with his legs. So it was really exciting to see him have that sort of success. And Dabo praised him in this press conference. He also mentioned that Taj Boyd has been mentoring him, and he feels like that Chris Denson has the it factor. But the problem is, now what? Are we going to see more of Chris Denson? We saw some things in the spring game that we liked, and then you just never saw him again until now towards the end of the season. That's one of those things that, and it's not just Chris Denson, but that's one of those things that frustrate me as a Clemson fan with specifically Dabo Swinney and his old school way of doing things. You look at players that have taken forever to get out on the field. And it's all about, what do we hear a lot? It's about trust. They have to build this trust, some sort of crazy attainable, statement that nobody really knows what it really means or not. What does trust really mean? How can you maintain that? How is that measurable? That is very much a feeling thing, and I don't like it. Because when you look at what you're seeing on the field, your eyes tell you, why aren't we trusting these guys? When you see Tristan Smith early on in the season, your eyes say to you, why isn't he out there more? What is the trust that he's having to build here? Doesn't make a lot of sense. When you see Gideon Davidson and what he can do, you're like, why are we ignoring him for a couple of games? Like, where is that trust needing to be built? Why isn't he being rotated? There's still not a really clear idea of where that measuring stick is. You look at Jeremiah Alexander. Jeremiah Alexander. He arguably could have been one of the best 11 guys out there, but had to play around a guy like Wade Woodaz and Sammy Brown that a lot of people got frustrated with at times as well. And it seemed like it took him forever to get opportunities. A lot of those frustrations for how long is it going to take you to get trust? Same goes with Corian Gibson, the trust factor. And then going back to Chris Denson, you can even throw Jaheim Lawson in there as well. It seems as if there's a lot of these players that have this desire to prove themselves out on the football field, but there is a block in the way. And that big block is the trust factor. Now, it could be that these guys are just somehow giving us flashes at these times. We have seen some flaws in some of the run defense for Alexander. We've seen some flaws in coverage in Gibson. We've seen some flaws in some of the blocking in Jacobs. We've seen some flaws in blocking and assignments for Davidson. Tristan Smith, we've seen some drops. So maybe what they're seeing in practice is a little bit more consistent versus what we're seeing, in spurts in the game. But what we see in the game more often than not seems to be in a positive way, motivational for the team. So where is this hang up around trust? Or is it truly just a flash in the pan? Is this Chris Denson's, DJU Notre Dame game? Is this Chris Denson's Cole Stout Oklahoma game? Those guys did have flashes themselves, but is it just a flash or is it the real deal? To me, the only way that you can know if it's just a flash or the real deal is keep giving him those opportunities to show what he can do. If you never allow these guys to play, then you're never really going to know. And the biggest thing that I have questions about is what's really being pressed on at practice. Are these guys really getting opportunities? Are they getting exposed? And are they able to show out or not? Why is the team, the players that take forever to get out on the field and then all of a sudden do well, why aren't they showing up at practice? To me, there's a little bit of a disconnect between what happens Monday through Friday and what is happening on Saturday with this team. Now, the staff seems to think that Denson is getting better and better. They feel as if he is extremely good as a runner, not as great as a passer yet, still got some things to work on. But to me, when you were in a situation where you needed a spark, where you needed a gamer, he was there to provide that. And some fans say, well, Morgan, it was just the Furman game. But I go back to saying it was just the Furman game for everybody else as well. So Dabo has a big problem. He doesn't know who the quarterback is going to be next season. If it were up to Dabo, I'm going to tell you it's probably going to be Christopher Vezina. I really do. If it were up to how Dabo wanted to do things in the old school way of doing things, Christopher Vezina is 1, Chris Denson is 2, and Tate Reynolds is 3. And that's what you're going to have. There's no transfer portal quarterback coming in. I put a post out on X about, do you think that there is going to be a transfer portal quarterback coming in for 2026? And it's like 60% of people said yes. To me, I think the opposite. I don't see how this staff is going to be able to bring one in and stick to the way Dabo Swinney runs things. It's just not how he does things. Now, he did add a few in the portal this season, but it was more or less because of just repeated mistakes in recruiting and some guys that have left for the portal, like Hoffler and some other guys that just aren't stepping up. So he felt as if there was a bigger gap there. I don't know if he really feels as if there's a huge gap at quarterback, but what we have seen is a game-changing quarterback, a gamer quarterback can keep that ball moving, can keep the chain moving, and can put points up on the board. And hopefully Clemson doesn't sit their gamer quarterback on the bench while their game manager quarterback is out on the field just trying to run the plays. As we have heard about many times, guys that are gamers can get you out of bad play calls and can mask some of your mistakes. This year, the superstars for Clemson have not been playing at a high enough level to mask those mistakes. And so for this team to have success in 2026, They've got to find something or someone to be electric enough in their play to mask the mistakes, even if they are there. That's the big deal for me, is if you're going to not play Denson, then the guy you play in front of them just can't be a good passer. They have to be a game winner. They can't just be a decent athlete at quarterback. They have to be a game winner. Your problem isn't that you need to find a decent quarterback. Kay Klubnik's a decent quarterback. Christopher Vizina's a decent quarterback. The problem is that you have to find a quarterback that is going to get you to win games you shouldn't win, mask the mistakes that you are still having. And when crunch time's around, 2 minutes left on the clock, you can trust them to go out there and be legendary and win the games and go out and rally everyone, not just rally the offense, but rally the defense. If you have another quarterback that's really not doing that, then you're going to get another scenario, I believe, that you saw in 2025. All right, we're going to finish up the show talking about that rivalry game against South Carolina. We're building towards it here on Locked On Clemson. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. And thank you again for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast in the country. Really awesome to be a part of this group. I know you love it. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that follow button on wherever you listen to podcasts, or subscribe button if you're over on YouTube. This rivalry game is, in Dabo's words, simple. Do the basics and you win. He said, obviously, it's the state championship. It's a game that will be talked about for a long time. But to me, Clemson enters this matchup with some big-time questions, and some big-time questions about, can they do those basics to win the game? Clemson is playing better, no doubt, but the offensive line right now, I do not like at all. I don't believe that they're going to be able to hang. I don't believe that they're going to be able to establish the run, but I do believe that establishing a run is going to be key for whoever does win this game. So I'm already starting out in a negative towards Clemson, because we saw against Furman what we didn't want to see, which was struggling to convert on third down, having to go for it on fourth down. We saw struggles to be able to run the ball effectively. We saw a defense that wasn't able to, our second string defense or third string defense that wasn't able to stop Furman. And so the first string had to come back out there again to stop them. Those are things that you just did not want to see against Furman. And now you saw them, and it makes you less comfortable, or at least me less comfortable about what's going to happen in Columbia this weekend. I don't like the offensive line. I've already told you that, but the reason why it's so important is because it spreads from there. It spreads to how much time Cade Klubnik has to get his happy feet or not, how much confidence he has to stay in the pocket. And also, really, the more important thing is to establish and maintain a running game. To me, what we have seen from Clemson is, if they cannot establish and maintain a running game, then the whole game is going to be a struggle from the start. And it's more often than not going to be a loss for this group of players. So having a patchwork offensive line already out the gate, not very good. Olsen Pat Henry not being available in the blocking scheme, in the receiving core as a tight end, I don't like that as well. But I do like Christian Bentancur. I do like Josh Sapp. So I feel as if Clemson has other options that aren't going to kill them, like they don't have on the offensive line. To me, they don't have a lot of options on the offensive line. They just have to deal with it. Now, the good thing is that South Carolina's offensive line really isn't that good either. So it's going to be two poor rushing teams with two poor offensive lines facing up against two defenses that are actually kind of decent against stopping the run. So who will be able to establish a run more than the other? It may come down to the fact of who has the better running quarterback, and you know the answer to that. That's what caused the win last season in Clemson, is Lenora Sellers. And so the answer to me would be Lenora Sellers again this season. Dabo was even asked, was Lenora Sellers the reason why Wes Goodwin lost his job? And Dabo said there was bigger issues, concerns for the future, not just that one game. But we saw it. We saw the lack of spying Sellers. We saw the lack of intelligence to be able to spy him with Sammy versus Wade Woodaz. It's going to be a disaster if you let Wade Woodaz guard Lenora Sellers. That's not going to be good. He's going to get burnt again. Sammy Brown's probably the fastest guy you have available to guard Lenora Sellers. And when you do that, I believe that you may be more successful than you were in 2024. Here's the thing, though. Clemson has to also be able to establish some sort of rhythm on offense and some sort of balance. And the way that the offensive line is currently, I just don't feel very confident with that. Now, they also had during this week, or at least so far, not very far into this week, but they used Chris Denson, the guy we talked about in segment 2, to play as Lenora Sellers in the scout team. However, Denson got stepped on, his foot stepped on, and now he's day-to-day and had to leave practice, could not finish. So 2025, when I read that, man, 2025 could not be done quick enough. I'm just over 2025. I'm over the season. I'm over the injuries. I'm over the bad play. I'm just ready for the offseason, in my opinion. But Clemson still has games to go. They have the South Carolina game. They have to wait for what their bowl game is going to be, and then we can go from there in the offseason. But Lenora Sellers is not going to be an easy out for Clemson. He wasn't last season, and he won't be this season. The biggest questions are, can Clemson lock it down when they get into the red zone, when they get pushed back? Can their defense lock it up? Can they contain Lenora Sellers? Can they win on the road, even though they're even thinner after all these injuries against Furman? Can they build some sort of offensive rhythm, even though everybody's banged up, including Cade Klubnik? If they win this game, it will be extremely important and valuable for this team moving forward to the offseason. If they lose this game, that's going to be a really hard sell for anybody who wants to come and join this team in 2026 and fix it. If they win it, it'll be an easier sell, in my opinion. And you don't want to allow South Carolina to have that advantage on you at the end of the season for recruiting or for the rebuild, because both teams are going to be looking towards what can they do to rebuild the team in 2026, because what they have right now on both sides is not really exciting or putting fear into the hearts of the opponents. Dabo still leans in on the culture. You know, he feels as if his culture and his leaders and their values will lead the way and will bring this team back to championship level. The problem is that we need to see it. Again, we can talk about it. We can hear about it. Culture is great. Execution is what matters in winning games and winning rivalry games. Clemson's not going to get a lot of opportunities to build momentum or silence South Carolina's momentum, so they have to start out strong. And to me, they can't just start slinging the ball in the passing game. They have to be balanced with a run-tack combo of Randall and Davidson behind an offensive line that's going to give their final, regular season push to be their best for 2025 before they get into the bowl game. All right. Hey, thank you so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono break down the most interesting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships to every game in between. Find Locked On ACC on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you tomorrow, and we'll see you at the top of the hill.